So Black Friday PC hardware deals are here again, and there's definitely some great deals out there if you know how to search through all the rubbish that's also available. Today we're going to talk about the things that I recommend, things I've used myself, and that I think are a really good deal. So let's get started. Every single year as it comes up to Black Friday, I always keep a very keen eye on different hardware prices to see what's going on the market. Of course, we can sort of exclude GPUs and CPUs for the most part, especially the newer stuff, because you're really not going to find any discounts on any really modern GPU that's just been recently released. Anything from NVIDIA's 3000 series or even AMD's RX 6000 series, you can pretty much forget even finding them, not even to mention finding good deals. Now, CPUs are a little bit of a different story. While Ryzen 5000 will be a little bit harder to find, there still are a few older generation CPUs that you may be able to find for a decent discount. So first, let's talk about some peripherals that I've seen and that I really like the price of. First is going to be a Razer Black Widow 10 keyless keyboard. Now this price is actually really good. I've owned a lot of these different Razer keyboards myself. Usually I find that they're very fun to use. The build quality is great. They're great for gaming. The only caveat that I don't like as much with them is the software. Even with the most expensive Razer products, I feel the software is like really intrusive. As soon as you plug it into your computer, the little Razer recommendation comes out if you want to install the software. That's really honestly the only thing that I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to these Razer products. But their keyboards, and this one specifically, I love it that it's the little bit smaller 10 keyless. Now I've also tried their Razer Mini, which is a 60% keyboard, and while it's really small and it fits great on the desk, I would recommend that you guys kind of think twice before getting a keyboard that small. I found myself really missing the arrow keys and the function keys. You have to press like FN to be able to use stuff, so it is a little bit frustrating. So that's why I find this keyboard 10 keyless, it just pretty much takes out the larger part of the keyboard on the right with the number pad. This has pretty much everything that you need, even if you're doing some heavy duty content creation. I've used these 10 keyless keyboards all the time, so I think this is really sort of the optimal size, not only to have full functionality, but also to be nice and unintrusive on your desk. Not to mention, I usually like the way that Razer does their RGB and also their keycaps. Everything generally feels pretty good. Of course, you can go get custom keyboards or things that are a lot more expensive, but this one, especially being under 80 bucks, I think is a really good deal. A lot of times these are going to be considerably more, over $100. So this is definitely a very high quality keyboard, and it can match whatever RGB you have in your gaming setup. Now, the next peripheral we're going to talk about is also from Razer, and this is actually my favorite mouse. This is going to be the Razer Viper Ultimate. When this came out, I think I paid probably like 150 bucks for it or something like that. So to see it at $79.99, I may even pick up a second one myself. Basically, it's a super light mouse. It's wireless. Not only that, one thing that sometimes I don't like about wireless mice, you do have to eventually charge them, which can be a little bit annoying if you have to keep a cable around. If you want to have reduced clutter with a wireless mouse, you do have to keep that cable somewhere. The Razer Viper Ultimate, one of the main reasons that I really like it, it comes with this little dock that even has RGB, and you can put your mouse on it to charge, similar to some of like the really old Logitech mice. If you guys remember years ago, they used to have like the little dock. This one, it's a very small, unintrusive dock. You basically connect it right to your computer via USB. Another benefit, you do get the wireless receiver closer on the dock, so that way when you're gaming, there's less of a chance of interference or, a drop out with the signal. So basically every time after I use the mouse, it's easy to put it back on the dock. You still have less wires because when you're using the wireless mouse, you can keep the dock out of the way. Sometimes I'll even keep it on top of my computer, so that way it's really unintrusive, really out of the way. And the main thing about this mouse, aside from that, it just feels absolutely fantastic. It's a very light wireless gaming mouse. They do have a Cyberpunk 2077 version that I had my eye on that's coming out soon, but seeing this mouse at $79.99, that's certainly an absolutely amazing price for this mouse. Once again, the Razer software, it's kind of like hit or miss. It's a little bit annoying, but usually unless I have to modify or configure something, I don't even install it. I just sort of run the mouse as it comes from the factory. A lot of times the buttons will already be set up in a way that's really nice for Windows or gaming or something like that. But of course, it's still highly modifiable. You can go into the software, have it saved on the memory. The same thing would apply for the keyboard. And then later on, just uninstall the software and just use the mouse as memory. But in conclusion, for $79.99, for those of you that want to try wireless gaming, I think this is definitely going to be one of the best mice you can get. In fact, when it came out, people really went pretty crazy over this because the performance was great, the wireless capabilities were amazing, and it actually got a lot of people to switch over from a wired gaming mouse into something like this, into a wireless gaming mouse. Another one that I saw for a really good price, and this is going to be a wired mouse, that's going to be the Logitech G502. Now this mouse has been around for years and years, and they've updated it over time with different sensors. There's even a wireless version. This mouse at $39.99 is really an unbelievable deal. This is actually a mouse that I think for general use, for people that aren't playing like FPS games or need something really, really light, it's a fantastic mouse for like general Windows use, for even most games that don't require to be like really, really fast. If you're going to play like an FPS game, I would recommend getting something lighter like that Razer Viper Ultimate. But if you're playing most normal games and you don't need absolute like split-second reaction times, this is a great mouse. It feels great in the hands. Build quality is great. And a plus, I really like the Logitech software more than the Razer software. It's nowhere near as intrusive. You have to go out of your way and actually download it instead of it popping up every time you like plug it into your computer. So that's definitely going to be a major plus. And the Logitech software is usually pretty refined. You don't have to log in if you don't want to. You can just change settings and save it to the mouse's memory. So for $39.99, if you want a wired mouse that's going to be like a real trooper for probably a few years, I would definitely recommend this one. So next, let's talk about a gaming monitor. Now, I saw this Acer Predator 144Hz 1440p gaming monitor. This one is one that I've actually owned in the past. Even back here, I actually have an Acer Predator, but the 4K version, the 4K 144Hz. So while this is a little bit older monitor and there are many monitors on the market, I've always loved the design and the actual screen that comes on these. Very high performance. For $467, I think it's actually a pretty good price for what you're getting with 1440p, high refresh rate. The colors on this monitor look great. They're not going to be washed out. And of course, it's not going to have some of the features like HDR and some of the things that the newer monitors are implementing. But I think for this price, it has more than enough. Usually on Amazon, this one will be a little more expensive than $500. I've seen it over time for maybe like $499 at Micro Center. So here at $467, I mean, is it an unbelievable deal? I wouldn't say it's unbelievable. I just think it's definitely a good price for what is a really, really excellent monitor. It's 27 inches, which I think is really, really the best size for these type of monitors. It's enough real estate that you can actually see everything without being too small, and it's also not going to be massive on your desk. So while there definitely are a lot of competitive monitors out there, this is just one that I think is at a really good price, and I've used it myself, so I know definitely how good it is, so I can recommend it without any qualms. So let's talk about a few CPUs. If you're in the market and you need a CPU, what should you get? The Ryzen 5000 has been my recommendation if you can actually find one with something like a B550 or an X570 motherboard. But understandably, they've been more difficult to find. Sometimes if you go to like Micro Center or you really keep a keen eye on some of these websites, you'll be able to catch maybe a 5600X, maybe a 5800X. 59 and 5950X certainly have been a lot more difficult to find. So if you need to build a computer and you need a CPU, what are some recommendations if you actually need one and you can't find a newer one? Still want to have pretty good gaming performance. The Ryzen 3800 XT, even though it's going to be a Ryzen 3000 processor, is actually a really, really great performer. The XT moniker basically means that it's going to clock a little bit higher. Sort of AMD introduced a new version of the 3800X and made it sort of what they call the XT. It's just basically a little bit higher performing, so it's going to be a little bit better at gaming. And basically, until the newer Ryzen 5000 generation, it was pretty much one of the best performing chips for gaming from AMD. Now, this also might be a good CPU because even if you upgrade later to Ryzen 5000, you can just place it on the same motherboard. If you get a B550 or an X570 or something like that, you'll be able to easily upgrade to like a 5600X or even a 5800X later on. So that way, at least the only thing you really have to switch out is the CPU. So I think the 3800 XT, if you really need a CPU and you can't find anything else, is actually a pretty decent deal. Now, if you're staying on the Intel side, I have seen the older 9900K for some prices really approaching close to $300. And And while it's the 9th generation, it's not the newest Intel, it's still a very good performing CPU for gaming. It's 8 core, 16 threads. Of course, it does run a little hot, so you're going to want to slap a pretty competent cooler on that. We're going to talk about coolers pretty soon. And of course, if you can stretch your budget a little bit, the 10900K on something like a Z490 will definitely give you a little bit better performance than the 9900K. And it's also going to be sort of on the newer Z490 platform. So what CPU cooler should you use on these type of CPUs, or if you already have one and you need a new CPU cooler? Now the Corsair 360mm AIO, the Elite Capellix, this one I recently got. It's come out fairly recently and it was just $189. And while $169 isn't a huge difference, it's not like it's on a fire sale or anything like that. It's definitely a nice little bump from that $189 price, saving you about 20 bucks. This cooler performs very, very well. You are going to get those 3 ml RGB Pro fans. They have great static pressure and they look pretty amazing. You also get that integrated controller to be able to control not only your RGB with iCUE software, but also your fans and everything like that. Now, I've even done a review of this particular AIO on my channel, so remember to search for that. Take a look at that as well. It's definitely great for $170. It's going to be a little bit more on the high end for a 360mm AIO, but it looks great. You get that Corsair RGB with iCUE, and the performance is also very good. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money, there's this Cooler Master 360mm AIO for around $110. Now, is there going to be a major difference between that and the Corsair for around $60 difference? I don't think there's really that big of a difference. The Cooler Master is going to be pretty competent. You're probably going to get pretty close in temperature. If anything, the Corsair may be a little bit better here or there. Of course, if you like the Corsair ecosystem, I think that's really what they're selling you on. Sort of if you have other components like a keyboard or their mouse or headset, or even a case where you want to sort of have the RGB all sync up, in that case, then you would make the argument for that Corsair AIO. But if you want to save some bucks and still get a lot of great performance with a 360mm AIO, definitely check out this Cooler Master. They also make cheaper versions that are like 240mm and different things like that. And for RAM, I did see a couple of interesting deals for RAM. Basically, the one that caught my eye, if you just want a very straightforward RAM kit for around 55 bucks, it's going to be 16 gigabytes of the Crucial Ballistic RAM. Of course, it's not going to be the best timings in the world. It's not going to be the absolute fastest, but for $55, I mean, this is a pretty good deal. And 16 gigabytes of RAM is really the sweet spot for what you want to be using. And Crucial Ballistics are pretty good quality RAM. I mean, Crucial supplies a lot of different manufacturers with RAM. And then the last thing that I usually look for on Black Friday are going to be hard drive, SSD, and NVMe drives. Usually these drives do see some of their lowest prices of the year. Some of the prices I saw now were pretty close to sort of Amazon Prime Day, but afterwards the prices went up and then recently they went down as well. Now there are going to be a few 2 terabyte drives if you guys want to have something for like a lot of future proofing. If you're a content creator, these are going to be great. If you're playing games, you guys know how big some of these games are getting now, sometimes over 200 gigabytes for a game. So having a 2 terabyte drive, especially an SSD drive, you can access all your files really quickly without having to wait for a slow spinning hard drive. And some of these for 2 terabyte, around $170, around $175, like the SanDisk drive, like the Crucial drive. You'll be able to find a pretty wide assortment of not only NVMe drives, but regular SSD 2.5-inch drives, such as the 1 terabyte one here from SanDisk and from Team Group. For under $100, you really can't go wrong with this type of storage. It's still going to let you put all your games on it and have a decent amount of room. And these SSDs, while not as fast as some of the much more expensive NVMe drives, they're still fast enough that if you want to use it as your main operating system drive, you'll basically not notice too much of a difference anyway from NVMe while saving a good amount of money. Alright guys, so these are just some of the deals that I found today that I thought were some pretty good quality stuff, some stuff that people could find useful when they're building their own computer. Let me know if you end up getting any of it. I'm going to leave the links to everything down below. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.